Hey, it's Elizabeth Potts Weinstein. Now we're on day 9. And today we're going to talk about what happens when other people violate your boundaries. And as we were talking about last time, really the framework that happens for when you're violating your boundaries is the same as you're going to have when other people violate your boundaries, which is hopefully a framework of partnership. And you may think that this is just me talking about an idealized world, but honestly, and I have seen so much conflict and so much litigation and stuff as a lawyer most of the time, including lawsuits, including gigantic corporations, including billion-dollar disputes. People really do want to act in partnership. They do not want to be paying lawyers millions of dollars to fight about stuff. They really don't, okay? It is a waste, and we all know it. We would much rather work things out. We can't because we're stuck in our own junk. So we'd much rather work out things in partnership. We'd much rather negotiate. We can't figure out how to do it. So we'd much rather act in partnership. Occasionally, and it actually is relatively rare, but occasionally you have someone who is in a place where they are incapable of doing that. Someone who is really disturbed, who really is incapable of acting in their own best interest. That does happen. No, do not get me wrong. There are people who are truly incapable of acting in their own best interest. Hopefully you're not going to run into that. Hopefully you will be able to screen people like that out before you will do business with them. But, I'm aware that happens. And if that does, then the best thing to do is to cut your losses and just not deal with that person as soon as you possibly can. But so let's assume that we're not dealing with that person. We're going to try to get out of that dispute as soon as humanly possible. Everybody else, we're going to try to approach it from a place of partnership. And so sometimes you can actually say to the person, we want to negotiate this out of the spirit of partnership. Sometimes you can't because they're going to be like, what? So it depends on the situation and who you're dealing with, okay? And by the way, don't forget when I'm saying spirit of partnership, I don't mean like legal partnership or someone who you have to be a legal partner with or a business partner with. I mean this in the sense of approaching things in the sense of working things out, in the sense of not being antagonistic, in the sense of a win-win as opposed to win-lose. So that's what I mean. I hope that was clear from what I said yesterday, but I just want to make sure that I'm getting some clarity from that perspective. So the first thing to do, if someone is violating your boundaries, is to just notice that they're violating your boundaries and to notice it publicly with them. And assume that it is a misunderstanding. Most of the time, someone violates your boundary, it is a misunderstanding. I know it may seem impossible. It seems impossible, I know. It seems like, how could someone possibly think that? Most of the time it is. Really. People think in just things that you think, how could that, they could possibly misunderstand that? It seems so obvious. Most of the time it is. Really, I'm really serious. It could be a misunderstanding that you're interpreting the language different. It could be that they actually didn't read it. It could be that they don't even know about that rule. They don't understand the law. They've never read that particular rule. It could be a language problem, like a translation problem. It could be that they remember things differently. I mean, you could seriously 100% for sure remember what happened, and they seriously 100% sure remember something else. I mean, there are studies have been done where people, one guy says light was green, one guy says light was red. They both honestly believe it was different. Neither of them honestly believe they were lying. It's amazing. So most of the time it's a misunderstanding. Let's just assume it's a misunderstanding and go from that place. So let's, number one, assume that and ask for clarification. And then let's approach this boundary issue from it being one of two problems. Either the boundary is in a place that's the wrong boundary, which means that we either need to adjust the boundary, now that adjusting the boundary may mean that you can't do business together, because maybe it's a boundary you're not willing to adjust, right? Maybe it's you're not willing to take phone calls from them at 2 o'clock in the morning, okay? And they need a life coach who will take calls from them at 2 o'clock in the morning. Hey, you know what? That may be something they need. They legitimately need that. Maybe there's somewhere the life coach will do that. And they're willing to pay for that. Probably somewhere there's someone who will, be happy to pay, charge someone for that. Awesome. Go find someone who will do that. You know what I mean? It just needs to be an express thing. So we need to be really clear about, is there a boundary that needs to be changed? And maybe you're not willing to agree to that boundary. Or is it that, well, you know what, actually, you're willing, it's not that the boundary needs to be, we need to not do business together. You're fine with the 2 a.m. boundary. It's that we need to change the price. Okay, I'm willing to take phone calls at 2 in the morning, but you got to pay $1,000 for each of those. Well, I might pay. I'm not there going, $1,000. So that's what I mean, is that you have to look at, is it that we need to change the boundary, or do we need to change the circumstances or just other things such that that boundary is going to work? Okay? So it depends. So what multiple things may need to be changed. And sometimes there's a lot of different clarifying language that may need to happen. Sometimes you may need to go back to the original contract and just explain things that are already in there. Sometimes you just need to read the language that's in there and be like, oh, that's what it says? I didn't even read it, A lot of times people don't even read the contract. Or is it that, the contract didn't even address that issue. Sorry if you hear that, the FedEx truck is going by. Or is it that the contract didn't even address that issue and we need to put in a whole bunch of more language? Now, it may be, however, that there was no ambiguity. It may be that they're not replying to you. It may be that the contract says they have to pay you $1,000 on January 1st, and they didn't pay you $1,000. There's no ambiguity, and they are not paying you $1,000. They violated the boundary. There's no ambiguity. Then you may move on to the next steps. Then we're talking about making a formal demand. Here's the thing that I want you to remember is you need to move on to these next steps in a very systematic way, a non-emotional, systematic way. So, okay, is there an ambiguity? You address any potential ambiguities. You make sure you get a message to them saying, your payment was due on January 1st of $1,000. Do you understand that? Make sure they were sent an invoice. Who knows? Maybe they didn't get the invoice, right? Maybe there was a confusion on that when the payment was due. There was no confusion. They got the invoice, whatever. They just didn't pay it. Okay, now, in a systematic way on, the 15th or some reasonable amount of time, you send a formal demand demanding payment. You want to make sure that you do this very specifically, very systematically. Because I'll see people come to me and it's been 6 months or a year after someone didn't pay them or after some boundary was violated like that, and then they want to send a demand letter. You can still do it, but really the time to do it would have been then, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing things in a systematic way. Let's address problems when they actually happen, okay? So send a formal demand. Then if someone completely ignores you, they're or they stole your photo and they're using it on their website, whatever it is, the thing that's violating, okay, then decide what enforcement action you're going to take. It really depends on the situation. Sometimes it's not worth doing a formal enforcement action. Sometimes collecting on that $1,000 may not be worth it because they're in a different state. Filing a small claims court action it's just not going to work. You're not going to go there. You're going to hire a lawyer to collect $200. Maybe you might, get someone to do, a collection agency or something. I mean, sometimes it's not worth going to extremes. Sometimes you may do a DMCA takedown for someone doing a copyright violation. Sometimes there's avenues that are relatively straightforward, where in some cases you may decide, oh, for me to try to handle this is going to be a lawsuit and that's going to cost me $20,000. In other cases, someone is doing something that's going to destroy your entire business, destroy your entire reputation. It's worth $20,000 for you to hire a lawyer to take this, to at least get the lawsuit going, because this is your entire business on the line. So you really have to evaluate the cost of what enforcement is going to be. And you need to be realistic about what the cost is going to be in that particular situation. And then you need to go back. And this is the real important thing. You need to go back to those boundaries that created the problem in the first place. This particular problem. Okay, so that $1,000 that was due on January 1st, that this guy didn't pay. Well, maybe I need to change how my payments are structured. Maybe I need to make it such that the person didn't have their entire website before they had made their final payment. Because now there's no ramification. The fact that they already had all their files before they made their final payment. Maybe they shouldn't get all their files until they make their final payment. You see what I'm saying? So, the idea is that every time you have a boundary violation, it's information that you can use to create better boundaries. And to help you not just create better boundaries, but communicate those boundaries much more effectively.